Hey everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to do the video that I kind of mentioned, I think a couple videos ago, about doing my opinion of Giana Darling's Fallen Men series. And this is a series that I'm finding you either love them or you hate them, which is why I have the title of the video that I have. But I wanted to talk to you about my opinion, and especially if coming from somebody who doesn't read a lot of taboo romance. So before I get into the actual details of this video, just wanted to again apologize. I'm finding that for some reason my Chromebook does, well, it's a Chromebook, it's not meant to record, but my Chromebook has this thing where it will freeze, and it's not something that I know is happening until I go back and I go to edit the video, and then there's a whole section where you can hear my voice, but my mouth is like frozen, so I'm like, or whatever I've got going on at that time. And again, I have no idea it's happening, so I apologize if there are some parts of this video where I am frozen and my voice is moving. It's not the best quality of video because my phone just is not right. I need a new phone. We're hoping in the next couple of months to be able to get new phones. In the meantime, I'm making my Chromebook work. So thank you guys for tolerating the lower quality. Also, I do not have glasses on, so if I'm squinting at you, it's because I can't see, but I have my ring light in the way, and I needed some light today. So we have some lights on, but it causes a ring light circle in my glasses. So anyway, there you go. Why I'm squinting, and I could possibly freeze at any moment. Okay. So, jumping into the Fallen Men series by Giana Darling. Again, as I mentioned, this is on every romance booktuber's channel at some point, I think. At least at some point. At least the ones I follow have mentioned this series. And I have been avoiding this series like the plague because there are a lot of things that I just don't usually like in romance. First of all, you guys know that I don't mind romances with sex scene, but I prefer there not to be like one on every page, and I also prefer them to make sense with the story. I'm not a person who just reads them to read them. In fact, I skip most naughty scenes in a book. I just don't need to know what y'all are doing, because, and I know that's weird as a romance reader, people think I'm strange, but that's just me. I don't like a lot of graphicness. That's not what I read the story for. I read the story for the romance, not for bumping and grinding. Part 2 of that is her books are taboo. Everyone says they're taboo. There's a couple videos that have given like why they're considered taboo. I actually didn't think they were as taboo as I was expecting them to be, but they're considered taboo. Also, I don't typically like age gap romances. Those of you who watched my least favorite tropes video will remember that this was one of my least favorite tropes. I don't like them because they're usually not done well. It's usually an older man with a very young girl, which comes across as kind of skeevy and strange. I mean, very rarely is it done well. I think probably Birthday Girl is one of the better versions of this I've seen, but there's not very many that are that good. And then if it's the other way around and it's a younger guy with a older woman, it kind of comes across like they're just in it for the physical relationship sort of thing. So I haven't really seen it done well. And I was just like, between the erotica type thing, the age gaps, and the fact that they're taboo, I just don't think these are going to be books I like. But I have several friends in the romance like reading world who are like, no, read them. They're not what you think they are, and I think you'll like them. So, part of my July TBR was to pick up the first book in the series and just read it and see what I think, and I actually fell in love with the book and ended up picking up all the books in the series. From KU, of course, and actually buy physical books, but I loved them, and I read the entire series in a week, so I impressed myself with that. Alright, so here we go with some of my opinions of the series. Great. First book of the series is called Lessons in Corruption. This is a book that I gave 4 stars to, and it's about King and Cressida. Now, to tell you a little bit about the motorcycle club world of the Fallen Men, is that the Fallen are a motorcycle club. I think it's in a town called Entrance, and I'm pretty sure this is in Canada somewhere. I think it's near Vancouver, if I remember correctly from the book. I didn't pay attention to location because honestly, Entrance could be any town in almost any, US or Canadian area because of the way it was described. But they're a motorcycle club. They are a little bit different than most motorcycle clubs that I have read before. They are still a motorcycle club that does illegal things, but they're not like sex trafficking and selling drugs to people and things like that. They're a little bit more legit than some of the other ones and legal than the other ones. So it was nice because they were still bad boys with motorcycles, but not like really that bad, if that makes sense. I know that sounds weird, but I liked it because of that. So the book starts off with Cressida, who is in a marriage that she's not happy with. She got married very young. She was 18. She married a man who is much, much older than her. And I think at this point she's like 26 or something. And she's just very unhappy. The marriage is very businesslike. They act like they're, roommates rather than in a marriage. She's very, very unhappy. The husband is boring, basically. And she just has had enough. But she stays put because, as a lot of people do, you stay with what you know. But then one day she's coming out of the grocery store, and across the parking lot she sees King. And King is on his motorcycle with his friends, and he is laughing. He throws his head back and he's laughing. And she takes one look at him and she's like, that's what I'm missing in life. I'm missing excitement and happiness and joy and, the unknown in life. And at that point, she decides to go back and file for divorce. Then you have like a 3-month time jump where 3 months later she is separated from her husband, getting ready to be divorced. She has filed and she's waiting for him to sign papers. And she has gotten a job at a school teaching English. She's an English teacher. And one night the teachers go out after work to get a drink at a local bar. And while she's there, she meets King again, the guy from the parking lot. They have a little rendezvous that night where he takes her out on her motorcycle and they see the town and they get to know each other better. And there's definitely an attraction there. Nothing naughty happens, but there's an attraction there and they really like each other. And she kind of goes on with it. Now, obviously, she thinks he's older because he's at a bar. And the problem is, he is not older. So, one day she's in her class and a new student walks in. And who is the new student but King? Now, obviously the taboo part of this book is the fact that it is a student teacher. However, I will tell you that King is 18. And also, they have a relationship that forms before they meet each other. So, it's definitely taboo. And if you are like very, standoffish about a student-teacher type thing, I definitely think this is probably not a book for you. But there are a couple things that really make this work. First of all, the age gap is really not that much of an age gap. He's 18, she's 26. It's an age gap, but it's not like as bad as I was expecting it to be. Second of all, he is much more mature than a typical 18-year-old. So King is the son of Zeus, who is the president of the Fallen. And King is not a member of the motorcycle club yet. He is expected to join, but he is not sure if he wants that lifestyle or not. He's actually very, very smart, very, very good at school. He has a talent for writing poetry, very, very bright, and he is thinking about going to college, and I forget what job he wants, but he's thinking about going to college. So he's kind of deciding, do I want to go to college? Do I want to join the motorcycle club? He's not sure. But he's much, much more mature because his father at one point went to prison. He was left with a mother who was a drug addict and like an alcoholic and all of that, and just didn't really take care of the kids. So from the time he was about 8 years old, he was basically taking care of himself. He's been on his own, take care of him and his younger sister. So by the time you meet him in this book, he's 18, but he's not really 18, if that makes sense. Like, he's much more mature. He's been out on his own. He lives his own life. He makes his own decisions for the most part. And he acts like he's maybe in his 20s or so. Part 2 of that is Cressida in the book, or Cress as they call her, fights this relationship tooth and nail. She's like, you're going to get me fired. This is not right because you're my student. But at the end of the day, they just have already formed this like bond and this love for each other before they ever knew there was a student-teacher relationship. So, a spoiler alert is that she does give up her job to be with him and does something totally different, which was always a dream of hers, but didn't get supported by the first husband. So that's like my spoiler for this book. But I really think that this is done well. I actually really liked King's character, and it was a great entry into the series because even though he's not a member of the Fallen, you get introduced to all the members of the Fallen. You get introduced to Zeus, who is his father. You meet his sister Harley Rose. You meet all the other people. So you get like a really good introduction to the world and to the characters, and kind of goes on from there. So I really liked this one. I gave this one 4 stars, and I thought it was a great book in the series. The second one is the one that is probably everyone's favorite book, but I have to be honest, it's not my favorite. And one of the reasons why it's not my favorite is because of the age gap, which I know that sounds kind of I don't know what the word I'm looking for, weird, because you'll understand in a minute. So this is everyone's favorite book, and it's called Welcome to the Dark Side. This is the story of Zeus, who is King's father, who's the president of the fallen, and the girl in the book is Lulu, or Louise. But the problem is she's 17 in the book, and I just could not get past the age gap. So anyway, here we go. So Zeus meets Louise at first at the age when she's like 7, and I don't know how old he is. It's a 19-year age gap. Do the math. He's like, what, in his 20s or something? And he rescues her when there is an altercation with a rival motorcycle club. There is a shootout in the church parking lot. Her grandfather is the pastor of this church. Her father's the mayor of the town. And she gets kind of caught in this crossfire between the two motorcycle clubs. And Zeus sees her and he, like, protects her. He saves her from being shot or whatever. So she starts calling him her guardian monster. Zeus ends up going to jail for a while because he does obviously shoot a rival motorcycle club member at the time, and he goes to prison. I don't remember how many years he goes, but while they're in prison, Louise at the time, or Louis he calls her, ends up writing him letters. And of course they start off as this little girl letters, like, how are you, my guardian monster? Let me tell you about my school this year. You know, it's just really cute stories. At one point in her childhood, she is diagnosed with cancer, and so he kind of talks to her that you're beautiful even though you don't have hair, and people make fun of you, you tell them not to make fun of you, and it's just really cute kind of friendship. At one point when she becomes a teenager, Zeus cuts off contact with her because he's like, you know, I'm an old man writing a teenage girl. It looks weird. We need to stop talking. And so she's heartbroken by that. Well, fast forward, Lulu is now 17. She is a senior in high school, and her cancer has came back. And she has decided that rather than sitting down and taking it as it is and just accepting what is, she wants to live life. She's like, if I'm going to die from cancer, I want to live life, and I want to go out and be wild and crazy and do all these things in life that I always wanted to try. So she reaches back out to Zeus and wants him to, you know, take me to the bar and take me here and, you know, just show me life because you're my friend and I trust you, kind of thing. So it starts off very innocently. He starts off as just like a friend, a protector type relationship, but then it turns into not a friendly relationship, and it turns into an actual romance. So I gave this book 3 stars when I first read it because the fact that she's 17 in the book just freaked me out, because I was like, it's not right. She's not of age. She's not legal. Like, I don't understand why people are like thinking this is the best book in the world. The dude's like 20 years older than her and she's 17. It's weird. But then I reread it a second time, and there were a couple things that stood out to me that changed my opinion of the book. So I did push this up to a 4-star after rereading it. So a couple things that work out in this story for me that I didn't notice on the first read because I think the age thing just threw me so much. First of all, the author is from Canada, and this book takes place in Canada. There is actually a section of the book where this is discussed between the two of them because he calls her jailbait. And she says, you can't go to jail for dating me, because I didn't know this, but in Canada, the legal age of consent is 16. So you can technically be with somebody who's older than you if you are 16. I did not know that. So apparently that's legal in Canada. I Googled it, and yes, it's true. The statement in the book and in real life, that is true. You can be 16 or older. So at 17, she's not illegal for him to date. And then the other thing was that she is the one who initiates the relationship. So up until they actually like kiss each other and the relationship goes on, he is fighting it. And he's like, you're too young for me. I'm not right for you. I'm not a good person. Like, I'm a president of a motorcycle club. Like, it's not right. Like, we should not do this. It's not right. It's her who keeps pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and initiating and getting his attention and trying really hard to get him to go out with her. And so if you look at it from that standpoint, it's not as skeevy, but it still feels weird to me that she's 17. So one thing I would say to everyone is that if you do read this book and the age thing freaks you out, look at it from the standpoint of like, just pretend she's not 17, think she's a year or two older, and it helps a little bit, because it was just really, I don't know, the age thing just got me a little bit. third book in the series is called Good Gone Bad. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This one is the story of Harley and Danner. Harley is the daughter of Zeus and the sister of King. I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't love this book. So I'll give you a little recap. So you have Danner, who's about 10 years older than Harley, and he ended up taking care of her when she was a child. Her mother was a real piece of work. I talked about this a little bit in King's book. It was just alcoholic, didn't really take care of her kids, and Danner was one of the older kids who would step in and make sure that, Mom, can my friend Harley come over and eat dinner with us? That sort of thing. He took care of her. He is the son of a police officer or a detective or something like that. Not quite sure, but he's in the police department. He works, and he's actually working undercover for the police department in this book with a rival motorcycle club. So he's trying to take down this rival motorcycle club that is selling drugs and doing human trafficking. Now, the story starts off with Harley defending herself against this boyfriend named Cricket, of all things. What a dumb name. But anyway, he's named Cricket, and he tries to assault her. Like, he's a very abusive boyfriend. He tries to assault her, and she defends herself. In defending herself, she accidentally kills him. She doesn't mean to, but obviously she's defending herself, and she gets scared, so the first person she calls is Danner, because Danner was always, or his name's Lionel or Lion. He goes by several names. In the book, he's Danner, because that's his last name, Lionel, which is his first name, and Lion, which is his undercover motorcycle club name. So, 3 names. I call him Danner, because that's what he's called through most of the book. But anyway, she calls him because she's scared and she doesn't trust anyone like she trusts him, and so he swoops in and saves the day, and obviously a romance ensues from there. I didn't really care for this book that much. It was okay, but this book was less romantic and more plot driven. So it was a lot of the motorcycle clubs and dealing with the ins and outs of how they work and going undercover in the crooked police department, because that's one of the themes in this series, is to have a crooked police department and people sweeping money under the rug to get things taken care of. It was not a lot of romance. It was a lot of world building, and I feel like the romance was more of a subplot, if that makes sense. So it's not my favorite book in the series, but I think it's good. It's used to really set up further books in the series, which I think was really nice. The fourth book in the series is called After the Fall. I gave this one 5 stars. I loved this book, and a lot of people don't like it because it doesn't really add anything additional to the series, if that makes sense. I'm going to explain it to you here in a minute, but this goes back to King and Cressida. This is a continuation of their romance. This is a few years in the future. I did like seeing them a few years in the future because you saw how not only King has matured, but their relationship has matured and how different her life is now that she is with him and not with this crazy husband of hers, old husband. And it was a lot going on with the motorcycle club. So you had honestly, the romance was a little bit boring in this book at first. The first section of the book, I was like, this is boring. There's nothing. It's all motorcycle club stuff. It's not romance stuff. So it was a little bit boring. But then about halfway through the book, there was a huge plot twist that I am not going to ruin for you on here, other than to say that I was devastated. Devastated. And in fact, Giana Darling has a warning at the beginning of the book that this is going to devastate you, this is going to upset you, but keep reading because I promise you it will end happy. And she delivers on that promise, but there is a huge, huge, huge thing that happens in this book that for the next, third of the book, you're just crying and trying to figure out how this could possibly get better. But it does. And I will say that someone makes a sacrifice to save the motorcycle club. That's all I'm going to say. And it was absolutely devastating. Now, I will say the argument that a lot of people have when they read this is this book is not needed. It's not needed. The storyline of what's going on with the motorcycle club continues in the next book. This book could have not been written, and it would have been fine. You really wouldn't have missed that much of what was going on with the motorcycle club and the Fallen. But I did love this book. I gave it 5 stars because this is one of the best examples of an emotional roller coaster. You're happy, and then, oh my god, and then you're happy, kind of thing. So, I don't think you necessarily need to read it, because Giana Darling does a great job of recapping what happens in this book in the next book. So if you're like, you don't have to read it. But I really enjoyed this one and gave it 5 stars. 2 more books to talk about. Book number 5 was called Inked and Lies. I gave this one 5 stars. This is the story of Nova and Lila, and Nova is called Nova because they nicknamed him Casanova, because apparently he's good looking and he gets all the girls. And it's hinted that Lila and Nova are going to end up together, and pretty much every book leading up to this one is hinted that they are going to end up together. But he's basically oblivious. They're like, she loves him, he has no clue. And so you're kind of like, how's that going to work? So I really loved this. Again, I'm looking at my notes here. So Lila actually comes from a very abusive family. Her mother dies when she's, I think, like 6 years old. Her father is a drug dealer, drug trafficker type thing. And she is growing up in a very, very violent and abusive household. And at one point, her mom and dad have a domestic dispute that ends in her mother's passing, and her father goes to jail. Before this event happens, though, there is this family that moves in across the street, and it's Nova's family. He's obviously called Jonathan at this point because he did not join the motorcycle club until he was older, but she has an older brother that's the same age as Jonathan, so the 2 boys become best friends, and so she gets to know Jonathan, aka Nova, by being her brother's best friend, and he is a protector along with her brother. Just kind of when mom and dad start fighting, or when dad has people coming over and starting issues, they take her over to Jonathan's house, and they kind of, the parents are like, oh, have dinner with us, like, go play with the kids in the backyard, that kind of thing, and they kind of act as protectors. So when her mother passes away, her dad goes to jail, and Lila gets put into foster care. Jonathan's parents decide to take her and her brother as foster parents. So the taboo aspect of this book is that she was raised as his foster sister, but the problem is that they never look at each other that way. Like, they're not really siblings, and when you read the family dynamics in the book, they're not raised as siblings. They're raised as, we want to protect you because we're friends with you. They're not raised as like, this is your mom and dad. Like, she never calls them mom and dad. She calls them by their first name. So it's not really taboo. Like, people were like, this isn't taboo, and I agree, it's really not taboo. There's nothing taboo about it, but apparently some people think it is. The book starts off with a recap of Lila's childhood. It explains how her and Nova know each other, about how they met, her background, his background, her going to live with his family, her relationship with her older brother, all of that. And when you get back to the, present day, or the timeline of the actual Fallen, story plot that we've got going on here, Lila has had a massive crush on Nova for years, and Nova is completely oblivious. Like, she's like, you're a friend, I don't want to ruin our friendship. He's completely oblivious to how she feels about him. So at one point she decides to move on, and she starts dating this guy who's he seems like a nice guy, but she doesn't really love him. She's with him because she's trying to move on, and she gets engaged. And the minute she gets engaged, you start to see Nova get jealous, because he begins to realize that, okay, I do have feelings for her, and now she's moving on without me. So you see a romance kind of ensue from there. There is a couple subplots in here that further along the, Fallen storyline with the rival motorcycle club, and the drug trafficking and the sex trafficking and all this underlying plot that's been going on through all the books. I think it's one of the better romances because of the way that it's handled, and also how accepting her family is, her family, aka Jonathan's family, is of what's going on with them. It's funny because when she finally comes and tells his parents that, so me and Nova are dating, Mom's like, it's about time. Y'all have had a crush on each other for 10 years or whatever. So it's really cute, and I thought this was a good story. I gave this one 5 stars. And the last book in the series is called Dead Men Walking. This is the most recent release. I think this was released in 2021. Not 100% sure. Did not pay attention to the copyright date. But it's a more recent release. It's the newer one. And this one was definitely a difficult one to get through. So Priest is the main character in this book, and B is the younger sister of Lulu. I did give this book 5 stars, but again, it's a very emotional roller coaster type book, and you have to have a strong stomach and not for the faint of heart. So as you guys might those of you who've read the series might remember that Bee is the younger sister of Lulu. We first are introduced to her when she's small. Obviously, she's older in this book, so she's an adult. And she is being stalked by, I think, a rival motorcycle club, if I remember correctly. I think it's one of the rivals of the Fallen, and in order to protect her, because she is the sister of the president's wife for this Fallen club, they decide to give her this bodyguard. So they give her Priest. Priest is a ruthless killer for, the Fallen. He is not a good man. He's not known for being good. He's being very standoffish. Doesn't really like people. He's kind of mean. Not mean like mean, but just like standoffish mean. Like he want no BFF or nothing. He keeps to himself. And I think one of the most heartbreaking things about this book was that you get an insight into why Priest is so turned off from emotions. He was very, very badly abused as a child. He's originally from Ireland. His parents died when he was young due to illness, and he was abused by the Catholic Church over in Ireland, and he's had just a really, really difficult life, to the point where he's actually closed off his emotions. He almost comes across like a psychopath almost at the beginning of the book, which really throws you, because you're like, how can you make this guy likable? But she does, because once you get to know him, you realize that it's not that he doesn't have emotions, it's that he's turned them off for so long that he doesn't quite know how to tap into them. So he doesn't even realize that he loves Bee until later in the book. And there's a really sweet scene at the end where he's taking care of his child, and you see that how much of a change in his character there was. But I will say that he is very violent man at the beginning of the book, and it honestly should probably be in jail somewhere, I'm just being honest with you. But she is able to turn him around and actually make him likable, because at first I was like, this is not going to be a 5-star read for me, because I just don't like his character. I don't get the appeal. But then once you saw Bee and his relationship grow, and you saw a layer get peeled off and another layer get peeled off and another layer get peeled off, and you're like, okay, this guy is actually likable once you can get him to get in touch with his feelings and stuff. But it is a violent book, and there is a lot of, this is probably the darkest book in the series as far as dark themes, abuse. He's been through the ringer, so not for the faint of heart. So my overall thoughts on the series, I ended up giving 3 books 5 stars. I gave 2 books 4 stars and 1 book 3 stars. So overall, a great series. I really like them. I have heard people say that she has more books in the works, so there's going to be more Fallen Men books coming out later on. I'm kind of interested in seeing what other characters she does, because I really love the series a lot. But they are taboo. I mean, there are some taboo aspects to these books, but really for me, the 2 taboo books in the series are really the first 2. The student teacher, and then the really young girl with the older man. The rest of these were a little taboo, but not crazy taboo. And they're a little bit more on the more graphic side with violence and with, sex scenes and things. But it's done really well. So if you're like me and you're what I call the romance skipper, you can skip well. So you don't lose the plot by skipping through the naughty bits and the more violent bits. So I really like the series, and I think what makes them work is how much depth are in these characters. They're really, really written well. They're written very, very well. And I love that she is very good at doing a backstory and a time jump, because a lot of authors don't do those time jumps well. But she does a very good job with the time jumps. So I'm not one who likes time jumps in my romances, but I actually really liked how she did them in these. So that is my long 30-minute video on Giana Darling's Fallen Men series. I hope you guys all enjoy it. If you've read the series, I would love to know your opinion. I read a couple other people, or watched, I should say, a lot of other people's YouTube videos on here to see what their opinions are, and I think we all kind of agree on most of the same points in the books, so it's always interesting to get a differing opinion. But if you haven't read them yet, I definitely recommend checking them out. Another really good thing I will say about the books is that they are a series. I recommend reading them in order. However, if you don't want to read them and you pick up a book and you're like, oh darn, this is book 3 and I didn't know it was book 3 or whatever, you're fine to read it, because one thing that Giana does is she's very good at recapping who the characters are, where you are in the plot. She'll give you just a little recap of kind of where everything is, but she does it in a way that doesn't feel like an info dump. She's very good at non-info dumping, but yet still giving you all the info you need. So props to her for that. So you really don't have to pick up each book in order if you don't want to. I just think it adds more to the storyline if you do, because you understand the backstory of these characters in more depth if you do that. So let me know your opinion. Leave me some comments below to let me know what you think, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!